Kassick's Corner, a podcast by a teacher for mostly teachers, likely, but literally anyone who wants to listen. We welcome everybody here. And what a week it's been. I am recording this like later than I usually do, so sorry it's like posted late for the 12 of you that are paying attention to me. I have a day off tomorrow, so I figured I was like gonna relax, and I've had like a headache all day, so I like didn't want to deal with it. And then I was like, you know what? I have such a cool idea. We have a lot to get to. I have a lot I want to say today, and judging by the title of this video and the podcast, you'll probably understand what it is. Okay, and if you don't, then it's fine, and it's fine, and I'm glad you're here anyway. First off, I did want to say something about like recent events. I think this whole like TikTok ban thing has got me like kind of just like in like a weird space. I don't know, because I literally started posting on this app after I quit my last job this summer. And the way that I think I've alluded to this before in previous episodes, where it's like, I don't know, it kind of like gave me this like freedom and this capacity and this confidence to just like go out and do the things I wanted to do. I'm going to talk about this in this episode a little bit later, which is why it's like really timely. But the idea that I was like finally able to do this was like not a small thing for me, and the ability to like do that was really, really just like a really cool opportunity. And I know I don't have like a lot of things going on. I know I don't have like a lot of people following me or whatever. But the idea that I could suddenly take this opportunity to do the things I wanted to do, right? Like I want to publish things. I want to be out there. I want to share my ideas. That has always been the goal. And I've always been like held back by circumstances and millions of other things I don't even have time for. Oop, drop my camera. So sorry. Um, anyway, audio listeners, I'm very sorry about that. This is not a professional environment. We are just vibing here. So the fact that I can finally like go and do all these things is really cool. So when it got, taken down for what, like 12 hours or whatever, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not going to post anything because what's the point? So when I heard about it like a couple weeks ago or whatever, and it was like kind of getting serious, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to put any more hope and effort into this, and I'm going to like go elsewhere. I'm going to like work on the other things that I need to work on. And I just kind of like stopped for a second because I wanted to make sure I like gave it the space it needed to like leave and exit. So like I said, I don't have like a huge following, but for me, this is like a big deal. And maybe that's silly, and maybe someday I'll be able to look back on this and be like, you thought it wasn't a big deal, but here we are. Um, Regardless, all of that to be said, like, we're also kind of in the midst of like this very unprecedented time. And I fucking hate saying that because we've all heard it for the past, like, God, how long has it been? How long has it been since we've been living in these unprecedented times? If you're a millennial, you you've been through it. You've really been through it. And I think I just want to, take a moment to say like, make sure you take the time to like be with the people and do the things that like matter to you, because we've been through hard things, right? Like as a world, as a nation, as a person, like we've been through hard things before. Whatever is coming in the future does not necessarily mean that we're not going to be able to overcome it, regardless of what we see and feel and hear now and how scary and unpredictable things are. Things have always been scary and unpredictable, and I think that is going to stay the same, and how we react to it is not going to change. We're going to push through it. We're going to be fine. And if we're not, then I guess we had a great time. But like I said, worse things have happened. Lots of bad things have already happened in history in the world, and even though history is currently rhyming with some serious situations that have happened in the past, we have to believe that it's like gonna iron out okay, because if we don't, like, what's the point? So to go along with kind of this like tone, this like somber kind of like energy that I kind of progressed, is for a long time I've been thinking about posting something like this because one, it like is a really close thing to what I care about and the things that I do like daily, and I wanted to make sure I gave space for that because again, this is my podcast. Like I can talk about whatever I want, and regardless of who's listening, I'm still talking, and it feels productive to me. So I'm just gonna keep doing it. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time because of the fact that like I quit my job last year, right? In May. I quit my well, I taught there for 8 years, and that was like my first teaching job technically. So the fact that I had to quit it and like move away from it because of a lot of things, it's been hard, I'm not gonna lie. And I remember all of the feelings I've alluded to some of them before. I'm going to get more in depth with it once I feel like more comfy and safe and like purposeful in doing so. I don't just want to come on here and be like, "Hey, here's why I quit my teaching job," because that's like not the energy that I want to present all the time. Like I want to make sure it's productive. I want to make sure that the story is told with its like fairness and equity and all those sorts of things. And I don't just want to come on here and act like I'm the victim because maybe I'm not entirely, but regardless of all of that, I want to make sure that when I'm ready to tell that story, that it's told in the way that it needs to be. And I've already written it. Like I said, I've already like written a lot of these stories and things that I'm talking about down, and that's kind of like what this is about, is like getting them out there a little bit in a way that makes it more presentable. But the idea is that I don't want to come on here and talk about it until it's time. That said, the day that I ended up quitting my job last year was May 2024, May 18th, I think. Not me remembering the exact day, because I remember I came home and I filmed like a video, like the very first video I've ever filmed for TikTok, and I came and I filmed it that night because I was like, I want to capture this because something clicked in my brain that was finally like I said, that freedom that my old school never would have allowed me to have was to kind of be on here and be a presence. And the way that I've been like wanting to do that for a while. Like I said, like I've had a lot of goals of like going out and like talking and saying things and publishing and like being a presence for educators, being a presence for people, and just like having like a voice that way. There was no way my old school like ever would have been okay with that in any capacity. And again, I'm gonna get more into that eventually once it's the right time to do so. However, I remember that exact day I came home and there was a Taylor Swift song playing. She had just released her newest album, The Tortured Poets Department, and I had a bunch of songs just like on my shuffle that I was listening to, and So Long London came on. And the way that I sat in my car and replayed it 2 or 3 times in my garage after I had gotten home from that day, and just like processing and going through all the motions and all the feelings of it all, and this song just like totally shifted meanings for me. Like it was good and it was emotional and it brought me to places before like this big event, but like there's something about when a song just like hits you just right and you are in the right moment to like really let it affect you. That's what happened with this song. And I have in the meantime been thinking about like ways to like say that. I think one of the early TikToks I posted was Taylor Swift songs I now hear differently after quitting my teaching job, and there's a bunch on there, but this is the first one. This is the one that inspired that. And what I did today is I printed out the lyrics. You won't be able to see them like perfectly in the video, but I'm going to post the picture of them on my TikTok because it's back now, I guess. And the way that I went through and I like analyzed this whole thing, like a bit like the big English major nerd that I am, and it really just brought me back to a place of like joy and happiness, and because of the fact that I got to like analyze this thing, but it also like was a thing that I wanted to say because it so deeply relates to like this connection it has to like my teaching journey. And if it connects to my teaching journey, I can only imagine that it connects to someone else's. And the way that like the Swifties got each other's backs, so I just posted a video on TikTok, like a really silly one about an Eras tour moment, and 22,000 views, so I'm just hoping that something works in the algorithm to like bring me there. But anyway, the whole point of this is to then like relate, like, hey, this song, not only is this like a personal experience for me, but hopefully like, hey, this is kind of what like the teaching journey looks like, right? Like I talked about burnout a couple episodes ago, or last episode, I don't know how long has it been. I talked about burnout a while ago, and this song very much also reminds me of like entities there, and there's going to be some connections in there I'll talk about. But the idea here is I'm just going to go through like my analysis of this Taylor Swift song, and this one's for the Swifties. So just sit back and listen, and I'm going to go line by line. I wish I could like play the song, but copyright is a thing, and when I post this like anywhere else other than TikTok, like it's not going to make any sense for copyright reasons. So I'm just like I'm not gonna sing. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna read the lines as I kind of go through them. However, if you have not heard the song, I highly recommend just like pausing my voice, as nice as it is to listen to. I would recommend pausing this video, going to listen to the song. It's like 4 minutes. Just listen to it, and then you'll have some context to like what kind of goes on. Yeah, it's whatever. I'm a Swifty. Get over it. Like it's not that serious, right? Anyway, I guess let's get into it because I think I've yapped about the introduction for this for far too long. So, here we are. thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me jump onto my little soapbox there for a second about the state of the world and about all these other things and about my journey. And I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes because I'm just yapping. Like I'm literally just yapping. There's no sense of outline here. I literally turned on my camera and I turned on this mic and I started yapping. I have a general aim, but you guys can probably tell by now that it kind of just goes all over the place. All that said, let's get into this. So, this is the song So Long London by Taylor Swift. And it starts kind of like I'm trying to like show it on video, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that. And it starts kind of like with like this like somber beat, and she's just like singing like so long, and she kind of just like it's very upbeat in some ways, and then it like really gets into this beat. And Taylor Swift has this way of like really hitting you with this like really nice like dancey beat, and then like absolutely devastating you with her lyrics. So that's not different here, you know. I remember listening to the song for the first time when it came out last year. I like waited up until like 10 o'clock at night and listened to it, and I knew track five was going to be like a banger because her track fives are like her heavy emotional beats. And while there are more like heavy emotional beats, I think on this album particularly, this one does still do like that track five thing where it's like, okay, this is like a heavy emotional moment. She starts off by saying, I saw in my mind fairy lights through the mist. I kept calm and carried the weight of the rift. And to me, what all this means, right, is she's implying this thing that she sees off in the distance. She saw it in her head and she's like, "Oh my god, if we just get through this mist, like there's this like really pretty there's like lights, there's like this really pretty thing that's there. And I want to go see it. I want to see what's there, right?" And the way that I now think about this is when I started this job, I was just out of college. I was ready to get a new job. I had quit my first teaching job, that long term subbing position I have alluded to in the past. And I thought all of this missed and all of this was how it was supposed to be, right? Like, I'm going to look past this and I see these like goals, these like lights through all of this. Like, I was literally waiting for this moment, like all throughout college, where it's like, I just have to get through this and I'll have a job and everything will make sense. I will just get through this and I'll be a teacher and things will be easier. And I will finally be to the place that I have been striving for so long. And I saw all of that in college. My first day at the job, I was like, great, this is it. Like I fucking made it, bro. Like I was waiting for this exact moment to happen. Like I could not tell you how many fairy lights I saw through all of this mist, right? So just immediately off the bat, I was like, okay, well, we're just really getting into it, right? The next lines are pulled him in tighter each time he was drifting away. And while she's clearly talking about someone in here, like, hey, he didn't want to even be in this place, right? And she just like kept grabbing him back. She's like, come back, come back. And I think I knew for a long time that the school I was at like wasn't the right fit for me. And I've alluded to that in other episodes as well, where I think it was around like my fourth year there, where things were changing and involving me without my choice in the fact. And there were a lot of decisions that were made that impacted me poorly, and some consequences that came up to me that I didn't believe were fair from other teachers, some value things from other teachers that just like, hit me in the wrong way where it's like I didn't feel respected by other teachers. I didn't feel valued by other teachers. I knew for a while, starting that like fourth year, that I didn't fit. I didn't fit there. And I denied it because I was doing so many good things. Like, sure, like there were still those fairy lights, right? Like the fairy lights were still in the distance. I stayed for the kids. I stayed for all of these reasons that like I just have to make it through this. I just have to make it through this. Just have to make it through this. I pause a second because I need to do like a little interlude here where um the way that I believe that like lyrics and reading and goes and how analysis goes is it's like you start with the words on the page and you have to give them the value and the meaning for what they are. So that's kind of what I've started doing where it's like, hey, these words mean this thing and they have this impact and they have this definition, but then the other half of like how literature should be analyzed is like through your connection with it, right? The way that I learned how to teach it and the way that I learned how to like analyze stuff in college, analyze literature, movies, books, whatever in college was very much of the idea of it's what's on the page first, and then it's the reactions, the personal connections, and then it's everything else after that. The best way I know how to explain this is like if you read like a poem or a story, you can say like, oh, this reminds me of like when I, talking to my grandma, and this reminds me of like what my grandma used to do, right? Not this particular poem, but not this particular song, but this is just an example, right? Like a poem, a piece of literature can remind you of someone or something, but it is not about that thing. Like it's just not. And that's the difference, is this poem isn't about your grandma. This poem reminds you of your grandma, and that's okay. And it's that distinction that makes a big difference, because when you're analyzing something, it's equally like an interaction between what's on the page and what you are bringing to the page, right? And that's what I'm going for with this, right? That's why there's two colors on this page. Is there's one very much limited to what the words are saying, and then it's like my reaction to it. So my little interlude is done. I felt weird not doing that like intro at the beginning, and it was in my brain, and I had to get it out because I couldn't continue. And these lyrics are making me all kinds of emotional. So anyway, the next line is, my spine split from carrying us up the hill. And the way that in this she's talking about like she suffered this like big injury, like your spine splitting, that is not a joke, bro. Like anything happens in your back, like you're cooked, like you're done. And the way that this teaching job had led to like burnout, which I've already talked about, it led to me like needing immense therapy. I like had a lot of health things going on because of this job, right? And I think just like the stress, the burnout, the all of it, the exhaustion, my spine was literally about to split, I believe, if I would have stayed there any longer. And I think that's also one of those things that's, I knew I didn't fit for a long time, and my spine was literally about to split. Wet through my clothes, weary bones caught the chill. I stopped trying to make him laugh, stopped trying to drill the safe. This is this is the point too where, you're just like so exhausted, where you've I don't know why. I think about a ship all the time in this, and there's like imagery of a ship in this song. And it's like you fell off the boat, you are pulling it with your back, you are getting there, and you're soaked, your bones are cold, like you feel the coldness in your bones, and you feel the exhaustion like in your bones. And still you like stay, and you still push through this thing because you feel like it's what you need, and you feel like it's this thing that needs to happen. And the way that when you feel it, and then you're like, okay, I stopped. Like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop trying. I'm going to stop trying in this case in any capacity. And I had reached so many moments at my old job where I had reached out to other teachers, like my instructional coach, my admin, and I said, I don't feel valued here. I don't like that I'm not being listened to. I don't like that these things are happening this way. How do I fix it? And the first incident of that was the string cheese incident, which was my third year of teaching. And from there, it just kind of like went downhill. My second year of teaching, I had a couple of teachers questioning like what I was doing for a brand new job that never existed in the school while I was like working to define it. And they were getting mad at me that like I hadn't defined it quick enough, basically. So, second year, third year, fourth year, all of these things like built up. And I eventually got to the point where I was like, this is not what it's supposed to be like. I'm tired. My bones are literally aching. And I had went to these people to say like, please help me do better. I had gone multiple times to, higher ups at the school, to other teachers, and saying like, how can I fix this? And at every turn, I felt like it was, yeah, we'll like definitely look into that. And then nobody fucking looked into it. Or I would have a conversation with the teacher after a conflict, and the way that there was like no interaction there, the way that there was just like a one-sided conversation on their side that just consistently made me feel like, why am I dragging this thing around? Like, why am I still here? Because I've tried to have this feeling of like value and respect from other teachers that I like never really got for whatever fucking reason, is the idea that they never trusted me to do my job. They never valued all the work that I did. And so I stopped. Like, I stopped trying to drill the safe, and I quit. And that was at that, last little meeting that I had, that I said, you know what? Like, what the hell am I doing here in this place when I'm have been drilling at this safe for almost a decade without any sort of luck? And here I am sitting in this meeting asking you how things are going to be different, and you don't even fucking know. Like, you can't even answer that question. So the fact that I I didn't know I had so much to say about this one line, but it's literally, I tried so hard to make it work over years, and the way that nobody cared enough to like help me, or be there with me or whatever in that same facet, I stopped. This is where like the bars of the line of the song like really come in. This is like the chorus. It starts the chorus. Thinking how much sad did you think I had? Did you think I had in me? Oh, the tragedy. Feels weird like saying it and not singing it or hearing it. The repetition of how much sad did you think I had? Did you think I had in me is so telling of like the frustration and the anger because it's like you're in the middle of an argument and you're like stammering. It's like how sad like how sad how much sad did you think I had? So it's like that idea of you're just going through it, right? And I was asking myself, like, how long can I do this? How long can I put up with this shit over and over and over again without any sort of change? How much can I push myself to this burnout, this, crises and whatever? How much can I push it that far until I just completely break? And then she gets in the chorus and she says, "So long, London, you'll find someone." And she's talking to like the building and the entity and the things itself. She's not talking to like to a direct person, which I think is super cool. She's always addressing like this entity because it's like every time you think of London, you think of these things, right? Every time I think of that old school, I think of all of this stuff, right? I think of the whole entity. And it's not just the one or two, three memories or people that were there, right? It's you think of the whole thing all at once. So the fact that she's saying goodbye to London, it's like she can't go back there without having these things come up. And that's exactly how I feel. Like every time I drive past it or think about it or hear about it in passing, all of this shit is brought up again. And the you'll find someone part really just makes me think of like, yeah, you're going to immediately replace me. Like, congrats. Cool. Awesome. Love that for me. Next is kind of like the next little set of lyrics. It says, I didn't opt in to be your odd man out. And again, this super relates to this like just feeling of inadequacy and this feeling of like lack of value where I had always put my best foot forward there. And that's with the next line, you'll kind of see what that means. But I wanted to be at that school so badly. Like I wanted to be there for the kids. I wanted to be there for just like the spirit of what it could be. And I didn't choose to be the one that people didn't connect to or didn't value or didn't respect. Like I just did what I needed to do. The kids really liked me. The success I found in my classroom was super cool. The vibe I created in my classroom is like irreplaceable to me and to a lot of the kids that came in there. And the idea of that somehow that makes me like the villain in some of their stories where it's like, oh, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. His classroom doesn't look like they're in rows and it's really loud and chaotic and I never understand what's going on in there and it's just whatever, whatever, whatever. And again, I'm not trying to play the victim because like I'm you know what, whatever. At this point, like I'm kind of over it. But it's this whole idea of like I didn't choose to come into this building, work this fucking hard to then be treated like I'm this, black sheep, this odd person out, this one that like is doing things that isn't what's supposed to be done because I was just there doing what's right for the kids and I will never be able to say anything other than like I did what I did because I had to do right for the kids, right? And the fact that like somehow that made me the odd man out was completely insane. And I realize there's a lot of background information that you're missing here, but we'll get there someday. The next line says, I founded the club she's heard great things about. I don't know what Taylor Swift is talking about here. Truly, I don't. Like, that's some deep Swifty lore that I am not keen on. But I started a lot of things and I ran a lot of things there. And I talked about this before with teacher burnout. I ran the credit recovery program. I was an assistant soccer coach for 2 seasons throughout the year for middle school. I eventually started running the yearbook for middle school and I did that for 4 or 5 years. But most importantly, is I was the first person at the school to ever introduce or coach a speech and debate team. And the way that that team had, I'm going to do a whole episode about this team, I swear. I promise I will someday. I just like again, it's like one of those things that like really just gets to my core and sometimes I have to really be in the mood for that. Otherwise it's like not going to do it the justice it needs to. Maybe it has like a two-part in it. Anyway, I founded the club she's heard great things about. This team was like a whim of two students that came up to me and they said, "Hey, Kassick, we want to start this team." And I said, "Okay, bet." So I did all the work. I spent all summer collating a bunch of binders. I brought it to the principal. He said, "Cool." He didn't even look at my binders, by the way. I was so pissed. And from there, we grew the team. I argued for it to be part of like the coalition of, teams in the league in our state. Because it wasn't. We were just a club for like a year and a half until I got the approval to like do that. I did the work to get that approval. Like I didn't get any help from admin really, other than like a letter that they already had like made. From there, I built the team. We started out as like meeting during lunch. We were meeting after school all of a sudden, and a few years in, it was COVID time. It was like right before COVID. We qualified for state. We had a pretty small, but very, very committed team of like 12 students that would show up to every tournament on a Saturday. They would spend all day Saturdays with me. They would practice 2 days a week. They would come in during their off blocks to like work on speeches and debates and arguments and all these things. And they qualified for state. COVID hit. I had a very core group of kids that still like stayed with me during COVID. I had some then middle schoolers that were really getting into it, and then I built that momentum back. Like I think the year after COVID, I think it was 21, 22 was my first year of having a middle school team that I again started. Like middle school teams are not, common around my state, and the fact that like I started one because not only were the high schoolers that I coached into it, but they were also, there were middle schoolers that were like, "Oh my God, can we do this?" Because I would do debates every year in my class, like as a final, basically. For every year that I've taught, I've done a debate as a final, and it got kids like really into like this idea, right, of joining the team. So I looked at one of my senior members of the team. I think he was like a sophomore at the time, and I said, "Hey, will you like help me start a middle school team?" I was at a 612 building, and I had this really like cool idea of going from like 6 to 12, having all these kids on the same team for 6 years. And the fact that they would grow together, the fact that they would have like an immense sense of community together, the fact that they would grow in their skill and then like become this bigger team. And I did all that. Like I did all that by myself, Like I had the help of like some kids, sure. I had a devoted team, absolutely. Like I can't say thank you to those kids like enough, right, for helping create what that was. But at the end of it, like I founded it, I did it, I brought it to that space. That middle school team went to nationals twice. They would have gone a third time if I would have stayed around. They went to nationals twice. I had the high school team. They went to nationals twice. And this is coming from someone who had zero experience. I didn't do this in high school. I researched it. I did the work. I asked kids what they needed. I went to tournaments. I asked coaches. I observed everything for the better part of 8 years of my life, for the better part of maybe 5, when I was like finally getting the hang of it, because it took me about that long to like build what I built there. And the way that to this day, and I've said this before, and I will say it till the day that I am not teaching anymore, whatever, moving on to the next thing, is that is the thing in my career that so far I am the most proud of. And the thing that I take the most pride in is that team, what they stood for, how they came together, and just like how much we grew. We started at this little like lunch club that was like trying to do like debate questions to put on the announcements, to this nationally qualifying team of completely 40 kids between 6th grade to 12th grade. And when I left that school, there were probably 40 plus kids that now did not have this opportunity to do that team. And this is why I would like to talk about it, because I have talked about it for probably 5 minutes at this point. So, the idea of I founded this club that you've heard great things about, and you just, again, this school had just then completely devalued any of that. I didn't get like barely any recognition for that. Nobody knew about it. I would host tournaments at the school, and there were like the few teachers and, obviously the kids who like cared and noticed, but on the whole, like it was just this thing that I chose to do because I enjoyed it. And while that's true, like I'm not going to say that's not true, it's also like there was no value there. There was no respect for the work that I was doing. I wasn't getting paid for any of that shit until like my 5th year in, where I basically said, like, you're paying your basketball coaches to do less work for less hours, and I deserve to get paid that as well. Again, story for another day, but I founded it and get treated like that, right? Like, I did all this fucking work and you're going to treat me like that? Like, absolutely not. So, I clearly clearly had a lot to say about this one line, and I think about it every time because it's just like, how can you then take that away, right? Because now these kids, there's 40 kids at my old school that now don't do this thing that they found a joy and a passion and a love for, right? And granted, clearly it was just because of me, but the idea that the school like now doesn't care, like you have all of these great things going for it, and you just don't care anymore. Like, what's that about? Like, not only does that hurt me, incredibly, that also hurts the students there, right? And that sends a whole different message. I forgot where we were. I went on a tangent. So the next line says, I left all I knew. You left me at the house by the heath. Again, don't care what Taylor Swift is talking about right here, bro, because obviously it's like I left everything that I had, everything that I knew, and you just left me stranded at some place. And this is the line that hurts the most. I don't know if you can, sorry if you can hear my tapping of my ring. I'm so passionate about this. I didn't know that I cared this much, bro. But this line, I'm gonna read it again. I left all I knew. You left me at the house by the heath. The fact that this line hurts so much because of the fact that I worked at that school for 8 years. I started my career there. I developed who I was as a teacher there. I created curriculum there for multiple classes. I spoke at conferences representing that school. I went to tournaments and games and all of these different things representing that school. It was everything that I knew, everything that I worked for. Like I said, I was waiting for this moment in college. Like that teaching job was everything that I've waited for. And I quit and I left everything that I knew, right? And I chose that because of the things that I needed. And there are some lines in here that'll get us to that part of the conversation. But I wanted to make it work. It was my entire identity, my entire personality for a while, right? This teaching job. And I left it. It was everything that I knew. And this school just said, great, good luck. See you around. The way that like my heart like still is just so angry about that and upset and sad and frustrated and disappointed at that fact. Then you add the salt on the wound of when I went to then apply for other jobs in that summer. I had a bunch of interviews. I had a pretty beefy resume at this point, having multiple different teaching jobs and then having all these clubs. Like I can basically go into a school and do anything at this point. Um, the fact that I was trying to apply for these jobs, I had all these things going for me. They would call my previous school, and my previous school would say, "Don't hire him." They would ask why, and the school would say like basically their perspective of the situations that caused me to end up leaving. But the fact of the matter is, like, I put my heart and soul into that school. It was literally everything that I knew. And then the way that they turn around and then say none of that fucking mattered, don't get a job anywhere else. I probably missed out on, I'm trying to do the math in my head, 4 5 different jobs, because they would call my previous employer, and eventually I learned that they were doing this, and I would say not to call. And then that's like a red flag for employers anyway, where it's like, oh, why don't you want us to call your references, like what happened? And I was like, oh, sorry, they're just being like complete asshats, like I don't know what to say about it. So yeah, they told all the other schools not to hire me, and it's just like salt on the wound, right? Like it was literally everything that I knew. And then they said, you know what, absolutely not. Like you're just gonna leave me and abandon me here and wish me good luck. So yeah, that line really hits. And again, every time I listen to the song, I think about it because it's like, how could I possibly have been put in a situation where I am pouring everything of myself into something and then literally just treated like dirt, like you just left me here, like you just left me here on the side of the road? Like, what is that about? It just proves everything that I've thought before, right? The next line says, I stopped CPR. After all, it's no use. The spirit was gone. We would never come to. Like, this is the fact that I tell kids all the time that like are still in touch with me, or I tell other teachers, or just people about this. It's like I could have made it work. Like in that last meeting I had, I could have done the things they wanted me to do. I could have changed the things they wanted me to change, because the fact of the matter is like they still wanted me to work there. They didn't fire me. I literally quit. They never would have fired me because I did all of these good things, right? Like I am a good teacher, and I'm gonna get into that in a second again. But the way that I could have kept doing CPR, and the way that I could have toughed it out, the way that I could have made it work based on the things that were happening, right? And I could have done these things for the kids, for the job, for this entirety of myself that I left behind, but it's no use. And she says that in here, right? Like it's no use. Like what's the point in trying to do all these things when there's literally no point? It was never going to work. And having known that for a long time, it's like hard to like actually admit it, but it's like, you know what? I'm stepping away. Like this is no longer my job, right? Like it's just so sad that realizing the fact that it's like no matter how hard I fucking tried, it was never gonna work. It was never gonna work. And the next line says, "And I'm pissed off. You let me give you all that youth for free." First of all, yeah, same. I'm still pissed off about it. I'm still mad, and I will stay mad. I don't carry it with me. Like I've moved on, but every time I think about it, I'm gonna be mad because that's just how it is. As much as there was joy there, there was also a lot of other stuff that does not make me feel anything other than angry. This is the line that also gets me. You let me give you all that youth for free. I started that job when I was 22, freshly 22, because it was 2016 when I got that job, and it was my first teaching job after I quit. I talked about like my in my teaching journey episode, I talked about how I had quit like a long-term subbing position right after I graduated, and I went into like this era of like this deep dark depression of thinking like, okay, is this teaching job that I've worked for and aimed for and hoped for my entire college career, like is it over? Like is that it for me? So I started this job at 22. I got it. I was last minute hire, which is a whole different thing. I then spent the next 8 years there. I got this job when I was 22. I was literally like a baby. I look back and like thinking about and knowing 22-year-olds now and knowing about like life development a little bit more, like I was a child. I was so excited just to like be there and work there, and I literally gave them 8 years of I gave them all of my 20s for the most part. You know, I gave them my entire 20s. Like I gave them that entire age range of like trying to make this job work, trying to work through it, trying to like develop myself as a person. Like I bought a house, I bought my first apartment, I was learning to pay rent, I was learning to like financially take care of myself in this brand new teaching job. And while working and working and working in this like terrible environment that just like degraded me and like disvalued me and disrespected me. And I was literally a baby. And I gave them all of that because I thought that was normal. I gave them everything that I had and I worked for because I thought it was normal and I thought it was okay. And now, you know, as a 30-year-old, like I guess I've learned better that that's just not the case. Like it's really just truly not. Like I did not have to go through all of that. Like you took all of those years from me in a billion different capacities just because of the fact that I thought that was what it was like. And I was just a kid. I was literally just a kid. I was 22, and slowly I began to realize that it's like, nah, this isn't okay. Um, but yeah, I really gave them all of that basically for free because I got paid in dirt anyway, basically. The next line is the chorus. It says, "For so long, London, stitches undone, two graves, one gun. I'll find someone." It rhymes and it sounds so weird like saying it. So, anyway, sorry about that for all the Swifties. Um, and it's the "I'll find someone" part that now when I'm listening to this song, I think about like what's next for me, and like it gives me like the sense of hope where it's like, okay, now I will find somebody. Even listening to the song on like that first day when I was like sitting in my car and having like an emotional breakdown, where it's like, yeah, I will find someone regardless of all this other shit that happened. Like I am going to be able to move forward, and I will be able to find a place where I'm valued and respected and all the things that I need because of the fact that I can move on and I will. And I did. And I'm almost there. And then here's where the bridge starts. So a track 5 bridge for all you guys get it. You guys know what it means. You guys know what that's about. And it starts and it says, "I say you abandon." Sorry, I read that wrong. I have to start over. That's so embarrassing. "And you say I abandoned the ship, but I was going down with it." There's a sound on TikTok, and this is gonna feel like a tangent for a second. There's a sound on TikTok. It's Aragorn talking to Frodo after Frodo is like going to get on the boat with Samwise after the battle where Boromir dies, and Frodo's getting on this boat to like go to Mordor by himself because he's like, I don't want to bring everyone else down with me. Like this is my burden. Like I have to take it. So Frodo gets on this boat. Samwise runs after him, obviously, but Aragorn says something to him, and he says, "I would have gone with you to the end." And the TikTok sound has this like nice bouncy, like hopeful music in it. And I don't know, every time I listen to that sound, I just like feel so many things. And like even thinking about it right now, it's like, oh fuck, like I'm gonna start crying on my own podcast. It'd be so embarrassing. So the fact that I think about this job now and this song, it says, "And you say I abandoned the ship, but I was gonna go down with it." It's I think the kids And some other teachers kind of have this idea that one, they think I was fired, which I definitely wasn't, right? Kids like believe that for whatever reason. But the idea is you look at them and they don't know the whole story. And it's like, oh, Kassick, you just like left, like you abandoned us, like you're gone. Now what are we going to do? And let's be so for real. And it's that mentality that made me stay. Like there were so many other problems in that school. Like there were so many other things that could have been the issue, and I was going to go down with that ship. Like I was holding on, and I was there for the ride. Like I was working to make it better in my own way. I was working to make the kids feel better in my own way, and I would have gone down with that ship even though I knew it was sinking. It's still sinking to this day. Like the only things I hear about that school are bad from the teachers. And the idea is you may say that I abandoned it, and maybe that's the story from whatever perspective they want to fucking believe, but I would have stayed for the kids if it was safe enough for me, right? But at some point it's, my spine was breaking, right? Like my bones were chilled, and it's about time that I let go and jumped off and saved myself, because I would have gone down with it. Like I would have stayed for the kids for a decade more if it didn't mean that I was compromising so many parts of myself and parts that I've like recently discovered, and just so much of like my identity as a person. Like if I didn't have to give up those things, I would have stayed. Like I would have gone down with the ship. And I hope that people realize that, because I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but I think it like maybe I care way more than everyone else does, and I'm just like going through this because it's, I guess, my process. I don't know. This is bringing up too much. Maybe I should stop. I hope you guys are enjoying listening. The next line says, "My white knuckle dying grip, holding tight to your quiet resentment." I wrote when I was analyzing the song, like before that I like did all my personal notes, is it's like, you blame me, but I was literally doing everything to hold on, and you didn't care. Like you resented it. You resented that I was trying. You resented that I was even here in this situation. You resented all of it. But I was holding tight to both the ship, and I was holding tight to the resentment, right? And they're one and the same. I literally wrote in the margins, I was like, the relationship equals resentment, because it's like every part about it was just anger and, pain and fear and whatever. So I was holding tight to the fact that like I literally let their rage and anger towards me fuel me for years, where I think starting in my fourth year there was a bunch of teachers that just like, had it out for me for whatever goddamn reason. And the way that I let that kind of inspire me to like keep doing the things that I was doing because I knew it was good for kids, and the way that I let like the write-ups that I would receive from admin, and the disrespect and the undervalue, and the way that I would let that like fuel me and just like push me forward. Like I was holding on to even the things that hated me and the things that I hated. Like I was so locked into that resentment of it all that it made me stay. Like that, even that part made me stay. It's insane to think about the fact that I literally stayed at a place where the resentment was the reason that I wanted to keep trying, right? Like the way that they would tell me, don't put snacks in your room, the way that I would go out that weekend and spend $200 on snacks just to fill my fucking cabinet, just to, say that like they didn't want me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Um, and sure, maybe that makes me the villain. You know what? I don't care. Like I said, I don't regret anything. That's like a life standard I kind of uphold myself to, and I would do it all again. I truly would. Maybe differently, but I would do it all again. And the way that that resentment, literally, it's insane, because I listen to this line every time and I was like, damn, you're right. I was holding on to it. It's crazy. This is very cathartic for me, if you can't tell. It's been 45 minutes and I'm only halfway through the song. I don't apologize because you clicked on this video. So thank you so much for watching, listening, viewing, whatever. I wish this had more focus and aim, but it just doesn't. That's not how my brain works. I'm so sorry. The next line says, "And my friend said, it isn't right to be scared." You know how many people I had in my life at the time that said like, you shouldn't feel that way. I was listening to podcasts. I listened to a podcast called Teacher Quid Talk. Very good. Highly recommend. And I was listening to that for 2 or 3 years before I quit my job, and I didn't take that as like any sort of sign. The way that I was listening to like other teacher podcasts and just teachers in the hall, and it's like oh, I shouldn't feel like this. Like it's okay to leave, right? Like all these people are telling me that like this isn't right. Like what you're feeling is not right and you should leave. But it was so hard because like my white knuckle grip was just like on in that school. I was in the ship. I was ready to go. But everyone is like, it isn't, you shouldn't be feeling this way. And another, thing that kind of came up was it's always like this idea of like me wanting more. Like other colleagues would be like, yeah, you like want more than what you have here. And I didn't really realize that fully and like what that meant because of the fact that like that means that I would have to have left. The next like few lines don't super relate to like what I went through because again, this song is like clearly about like a relationship. So like it's not the same, but I'm going to read them anyway. Every day of a love affair, every breath feels like rarest air when you're not sure if he wants to be there. And then it goes into, so how much sad did you think I had? Did you think I had in me? How much tragedy? There were certain days towards the end there in my definitely seventh year and then my eighth year, for sure, 100%, that certain teachers would walk down the hall, certain admin would walk down the hall, and the way that I would immediately dive into my room, or the way that I would immediately turn around, or the way that I would fake a conversation or pretend to be on my phone and ignore them, the way that my heart, even to this very moment, raises, like my heart rate just increases so like quickly because just thinking about that because of this just like the blatant anxiety that and I'm fiddling with. I haven't been doing that this whole time. I have not been fiddling with my strings on my hoodie this whole time, and I start thinking about the anxiety of these people and I start doing it. Like if that's not telling enough, I don't know what is. But it's this idea of just like every breath in that school every day should not feel one where you're like dreading to go into work. Like it just shouldn't. And it just should not ever feel that way for anyone, whatever career that you're in. And in our last final meeting, when I decided to quit after, they were imposing another consequence for whatever reason, I asked them, I was like, okay, so like, where does this leave us? Like, you're not going to fire me. You already said that. And I was like, so what do I need to do to like stick around? And what do I need to do to prove to you that like I'm going to like do better? And they basically said, I don't know. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? And it was in that moment where I was like, I was on the border to like deciding whether or not, like, because at this point I was like, okay, well, they're either going to fire me or I'm going to quit. And I asked him, and I was like, okay, so like, I still want to be here. Like, I still want to be here for the kids. I still value the things that I'm doing, and I want to be here. And I said, what do I have to do? And they were like, I don't know what that looks like. They said to my face, they said, I don't know. So then I looked at him and I said, great, I don't want to be here. And that by itself, I think is just why what do you mean you're not sure? Like how do you not know? That's like your whole job is to like help mentor these people, and clearly you don't hate me enough to like get rid of me. So like what the hell is going on here? It's just that more disrespect, more undervalue. It's just awful. And then it goes here and then it says, just how low did you think I'd go before I'd self implode, before I'd have to go to be free? At this point, I think I think that those three lines are self-explanatory where they wanted me to do the things to stay, and I took that bait in the meeting and I said, I'm not going any lower than this. Like I'm truly not, because I feel like had I been there this whole year, I would have self-imploded. It would have gone bad. And I chose instead to like then go to be free. So how much of this shit should I have to take before it's time for me to go? And like I said, at this point, this is year 8. I started feelings of like this, like undervalue, this disrespect, this, just inherent resentment in this building since like my third year. So what is that like 3 to 4 to 5 years of just feeling like this incessant anxiety, this incessant lowness of it all. Like how much lower, just like the song says, just how low did you think I'd go before I'd finally leave? Here we go into like the our final lines here, and then we're almost done with this. I can't believe I've talked about this song for an hour. That's somehow not surprising to me. I could do this to every Taylor Swift song. Let's be so for real. But this one specifically relates to teaching. Here's our last the starting of our last little line. Don't worry, I got a lot more to say. You swore that you loved me, but where were the clues? I died on the altar, waiting for the proof. In that last meeting that I had with my administrators, they said over and over again, they said, you are a great teacher. You are a great educator. 98% of you is literally undeniably great and awesome at your job. And I said, okay, so then what is this conversation? And they said, the 2% of you that like needs to change or adjust or keeps making these choices that like, you know, turn you against us basically is what's not good enough. And I said, so how can 98%? That's what they said. They said 98%. I have it written down. It's in my memory. I specifically remember when they said that. They said 98% of you is great. So you swore that you loved me. You swore that I was a good teacher, but where was all the clues? I can point to more moments. I can point to millions of moments, not millions, but I'm being hyperbolic. I can point to a dozen moments each year that has proven the exact opposite, that I wasn't a great educator, that they made me feel like less than. They made me feel like I was again like this black sheep, this terrible person, this victim, right? And I just like wasn't gonna bite into that. And I was literally begging them, and I had, as I alluded to before, I was talking about all these moments throughout the years that I have like literally begged and pleaded and made meetings to like try to get a better sense of feeling from all of these different things, and the fact that they just like never were willing to prove it. They were never willing to like show it to me. They were never willing to like say what they actually did. Where were the clues? Right? Like I literally died on the altar, metaphorically, obviously. Taylor Swift didn't die either. But I quit the job waiting for the proof of that value. I got it here and there. I got it every day from the kids, but we already knew that. Like, how long can you do it for the kids, right? Like, I died on the altar waiting for a sense of value from the place, this this entity of all the stuff that I devoted myself to. The next two line, actually, I'm just going to do this one. You sacrificed us to the gods of your bluest days. And there were so many other issues in the school. Like, I think I alluded to that already. There was one particular issue that happened this year that, directly kind of impacted like a whole bunch of different things that year, and why, like, 20 teachers left that whole year, 20 out of like 65. It was a very small school. So there was a lot of things that were happening, and I think I was a consequence, a sacrifice of all of those different situations in some capacities, right? Where they were just like, okay, all these different things are happening. They handled this the way they handled it with me, and I was like a sacrifice to these dark days that they were kind of feeling, and you know, it just is what it is. And I'm just getting color back into my face. This is relating kind of to, I literally wrote in the margins, delete that other thought. I literally wrote in the margins, I wrote, Am I? Am I getting color back into my face? I don't know. I feel like some days, yeah. But then there are other days where it's like, what am I doing? Like, is this it? Like, what is the vibe right now? So am I getting the color back into my face? I don't know. When I got all those interviews this summer, I thought I was getting color back into my face, right? Like I was posting on TikTok, I was enjoying myself, I was having all these good times, and then I would just like not get a job, and I would get really excited that I would get an interview, and they would take me, and like all these different things, and then they would call my employers, and they would say don't hire him, and am I getting the color back into my face since then? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just mad as hell because I loved this place. Yeah, this is this is getting like too real right now. Um, I think there's nothing else to say from that line. It just says I'm just mad as hell because I loved this place. And there's not one piece of me that again regrets anything that I did or wants to go back and change things, because if the work that I put into it, if this fucking episode of this podcast is not enough, if all the shit that I've said before about that school, all the impacts that I've made, all the kids from that school, if none of that is saying enough by itself that I love this place, then I don't know. I don't know what does. I'm mad, but I loved this place. And the fact that I just like was like kind of tossed aside is why the song, like, you can kind of tell why the song hits so hard, because it's like I it's just this resentment, it's just this anger because of the fact that I devoted so much time and energy to this place for them to just toss me aside. You know what I mean? And just pretend like none of it ever mattered. And I'd like to think that, Taylor Swift was feeling the same way, because a relationship is pretty similar to that, like 8 years of devotion and time and energy spent towards something or someone. and the fact that that person, that thing, that entity just like deletes it and pretends it doesn't exist, that fucking hurts. Here's the last little lines, and I'm not going to read these ones because they kind of just repeat over and over again, the same kind of energy. But I'll read these ones. It says, "For so long, London." Then it echoes, "So long, London." And then it says, "Had a good run, a moment of warm sun." And that just kind of also goes to say that, like, every time I think about that school, while all these feelings of like regret, not regret, of all these feelings of like anger and resentment and disappointment kind of echo, it's also like I look back on all of those moments and I with such fondness and with such just like this energy of like that's what made me. And there are so many moments there that I can't ever replace or begin to even think about what they mean to me. And so it was a good run. And even though we're like angry and sad and upset and disappointed by it all, it was this like moment for me too that I will look back on for decades from now and just know that I did what I needed to do there. And it was this very warm, very welcoming, very meaningful part of my life. And I hope it was the same for the people that, I was a part of there as well. And then it's just this idea later in this song of like, see you later, like so long, like everything's where it needs to be. You'll move on, I'll move on, and that's just how it has to be. So I wrote like a, a little thing at the end down here, and it says basically I'm mad, but I'm moving on. I will never be able to listen to the song without thinking of this, without thinking of any of this situation, that experience, that's whatever. It's just because like the song came on at that like one direct little moment, and that's what I wrote right here. It's just because the song came on at like one specific moment in my life where I happen to like relate to every single lyric in this song in like a deep emotional capacity that I was sitting in my car that same afternoon that I decided to like quit my teaching job, and the song came on and I was like, holy hell, like I did not expect that. I was not ready for that, and it just kind of hit. And that's why I wanted to come on here and say this. I think there's a lot of things like happening in the world right now that make me feel like nostalgic and make me wish that like things were different or things that were better the way that they were however long ago. And it's this idea of I've always wanted to like say something about it and like embrace it because it's like that's like part of who I am and all of these different things. So thanks for letting me do that. That was So Long London by Taylor Swift, and know that I deeply, deeply relate to it. And I try really hard not to listen to it because it makes me super emotional, but it's so good. It's such a good song. There's another Taylor Swift song. I wrote it on there. There's also Tolerate It that, truly relates to that. If you, yeah, the Swifties will get it. The Swifties will know that relates to that situation as well. And I try not to listen to that song, but I also listen to that song with the idea of like a relationship in mind as well. So the idea that you just like try really super hard to do things and then not it's not reciprocated. Anyway, I don't want to start like a whole new tangent, so thank you for letting me rant about my feelings about one particular Taylor Swift song. Thanks for listening to my rants about education and my own personal experiences when, like I said, there are probably 12 of you that are listening and that care. So thank you so much for being a part of it. Thanks for stopping over in Kassick's Corner. And I'm so proud of you. See you in the next one. Follow me on all the socials at Kassick's Corner. And I hope to see you around.